Okay, so when you've downloaded your first log file, this is only the first time too, incidentally, you'll have to configure the logging page so it makes some sense. So you've downloaded your log file, it says you want to view it, you go yes, you need to click on this logging tab up here, and then you look at that and think, well, that's sort of not what I was expecting. So anything that's in grey hasn't been highlighted. So there may be some other views in here that you'll just want to delete. So if you click on this box here, it'll say, do you want to delete this view? So there's a couple of random ones here. I can't remember what they are, but you'll want to delete those. These boxes are actually showing that they're unlocked already. This icon won't appear until you click on the X. When this icon beside it, which looks like Darth Vader's like ship, that allows you to drag that view around and stretch and do all the normal Windows type stuff you do. So this thing down here is called the Navigator. So I would normally stretch that right out across the page, and you'll see afterwards that's what a heat race will look like, or that's where you'll see your RPM strikes. This is your time plot. This is where you tend to overlay stuff like throttle position, lambda, coolant temp, all that sort of stuff. Parameter list is what you're actually logging. So we normally drag that box over there, and then we stretch this one right out, like that. So you can see you've got RPM scale, but nothing else is logged because we haven't asked the EC to log it. So we'll go through and we'll delete all these now. So in that case, we just right click inside that box. It'll bring up properties, left click on properties, and anything that's grey, which means we haven't logged any information, we'll just remove it. So we'll go bang, 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 and in this particular case, I didn't log coolant temp because I had a funky setup on the dyno that we were messing with, so we logged the coolant temp through the dyno data. So we'll remove that as well. We'll click OK, and that brings back information here that we logged. And I'm keeping this really simple for the display. So the RPM trace doesn't look right. That's because it's out of scale. So once again, you'll right click in there, left click on properties, double click on engine speed, and we'll run that up to say 17,000, which is just a key thing, and hit OK. Now in group 2, there's no data. So for my money, after a heat race, the throttle position and all that sort of stuff I'm not really too concerned about, or at least after hot laps, but I do want to know if I've got fuel pressure and if my coolant system and potentially battery voltage is all doing what it should do, because that's the sort of stuff that we'll bring you undone later in the night. So we highlight in group 2, that was grey, so it meant we hadn't logged that. What I would do at that point is add the parameter that we want to look at, which in this case we'll say fuel pressure. We'll click OK. And then we'll remove the one that the channel that we haven't logged any data on. Now normally I would have engine coolant hooked up. That's obviously important because you want to know that your coolant system's doing its job and everything's going to be fine and you don't have to worry about it getting too hot. In this instance, I'll change that to battery voltage. So these are all left and right clicks. It's nothing to be scared of. This has nothing to do with the tune-up of the engine. You can't ruin the way the engine runs. All it's doing is storing the information it used to make the engine go, and then allows you to look at it later on. So we'll hit add parameter. It will bring up the parameter selection, which is similar to your parameter list, and we'll go into analog inputs, and we'll just click on battery voltage. OK. We'll remove the grey ones because they were channels that we didn't log. Oops, I got ahead of myself there. I just deleted a group. So incidentally, I just deleted the group by mistake, which is a group is this section of the time plot. So we'll just put the group back in. So I've highlighted the group and I want to add a parameter. And the parameter I want to look at is battery voltage because we may have thought we had a problem or whatever. We're going to click battery voltage, OK. and OK. And you see that we weren't logging fuel pressure on the dyno. Once again, that was not logged through the ECU, but we logged that through the dyno itself. But in the event that we were at the track, we would want to see a nice fuel pressure trace that starts out at 85 and at the end of the highest RPM it'd be at about 84, and we'd just see this nice oscillation that was nice and even across the page. So if we started with 84 or 85 and we finished with 84 or 85, that's a pretty fair bet to say that our fuel pump, fuel filter, fuel tank breather is all working as it should. Our battery voltage down here is exactly the same. It's slightly out of scale there because of where I've turned the engine off. So it looks a little bit out. There's a grey box on the side. You may not be able to see it. It's a Windows type thing, arrow up, arrow down. We can get a little bit more resolution just by moving that around. This is all stuff, once again, you can't ruin anything. All you can do is keep left and right click and just keep playing around and display it in a view that you're happy with. So in this instance, we can see our battery voltage when the engine's under no load was hovering around the 14.2 range, and then as we put load on the charging system by firing the coils and so on, it dropped down to about 13.4, and that's fine. That's within a range that it's really happy at. And we would see a similar trace on the fuel pressure. So what we're looking at here is trends, or what we're looking for is trends. We just want to see that our cooling system's doing what it should do, our battery system and our fuel pressure, or at least that's what I want to see at the start of the night. And if that's okay, I stop worrying about it. You just drive the car and set the car up and forget about the fact it's on EFI. Now when you're looking at actual race data, there's not a lot of resolution in that. So if you look down here in the Navigator, now if this was a data trace from a race, you would see that your RPM would peak at the end of the back straight, you would come down through the turn, your RPM would peak again at the end of the front straight. You'll get a real picture of where you were. If there was any stoppages, you'd see a long period of idle. So in this case, we just want to check the maximum RPM. We'll pretend this is lap 2. Highlight that box, use your arrow up and down keys, and you'll see down here in the Navigator pane that we've grayed out some of the area, and what we're looking at here that's highlighted is what we're looking at up here. So if you want to drag that across, you can go to the end of the race, the start of the race, whatever was of interest. But in this instance, we want to see whether we had an RPM limit strike. So fuel pressure is good. We'll go back in and we'll change fuel pressure, highlight it, add parameter, go into our engine protection, RPM limit status, click OK, turn fuel pressure off. So we'll remove it and then click OK. Now you probably can't see, but there's a line through there, and essentially when the RPM limit is hit, we'll get a strike on that line up and down the page. It's really obvious. Now we haven't hit it because we're on the dyno. That'd be bad business if we did. So the RPM trace looks pretty good. Incidentally, we want to see what our high is. We'll use our arrow key to get a heap more resolution, and then we can run up the page with the arrow key, and we'll go all the way up there like that until we see anywhere where the cursor is, all that information shows up in the parameter list box. So in this instance, on that particular dyno run, we would have ran it, we would have recorded the 16,000 RPM, and the high the engine seen was 16.1. So you don't need a lot of imagination to realise that you can view this in any way, shape or form you like. This is just a particular view I use, and I use it because essentially I'm looking for trends, and if everything looks okay, it is okay, and if you're running really well and you don't need the information, you pack all this up and just race the rest of the night. In the event that you have some sort of trouble, you would then download the log, and fuel pressure is a great one, where fuel pumps are failing or where there's something weird going on. Battery voltage is another one. You'll see the trend across the page is you'll start with good fuel pressure and it'll dwindle off, and maybe your battery voltage will follow, and instantly you can just forget worrying about whether it's your engine, whether it's your tune-up. it instantly just takes you to the right area. We have a bad habit of saying the data makes not so smart people look pretty clever, and it's true, we're all in the same boat. We haven't got a lot of time between heats, and you don't want to be messing around with stuff that's not broken. You want to just be able to go straight to the source, and that's what keeping accurate logs and making use of the logging function, that's what it's all about.